We're going to start today with the midterm elections. 79 days away. The president of the United States, who has tried over and over and over again to subvert the will of the people, is at it again. Just a few days ago, President Trump did not exactly rule out declaring a national emergency to assert control over the elections come November.
Let me put an idea in your head, okay? Because it's so hard to get the Senate to do anything, now they're on recess, they don't get anything done. If you declare a national security emergency as the President of the United States, they can't challenge it. It can only be overturned by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress. So if you do this in the next month, we will get photo ID, proof of citizenship, and a limit to mail-in ballots. And
let me say that stranger things have happened. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Let me say stranger things have happened, and I'll leave it at that. Stranger things have happened? Sheesh. When a conservative commentator pitches a scenario to unilaterally take over the election before the votes are even cast, a simple no would have been just fine. Either way, what he is proposing is unconstitutional. This is just the latest warning sign that the president is ready and willing to meddle in the democratic process, whether it is by pushing garbage claims of voter fraud, restricting access to mail-in voting, how about gerrymandering, congressional maps, gutting the Voting Rights Act, challenging the results afterward. He's already had plenty of practice doing that. And now a national emergency to pass the SAVE Act, which would further disenfranchise millions of voters. But again, can he even do that legally? Negative. Here's a quick fact check, or let's call it a reality check with a little help from the 33rd president of the United States of America, Harry Truman. Here's the deal. Harry Truman has some history with national emergencies. Harry Truman's issue was not an election, but a possible steel strike right in the middle of the Korean War. Harry Truman was concerned that a strike between the companies and the workers would lead to the United States and the troops not getting the weapons and the tanks that they needed to fight. He was at odds with Congress, and so he leapfrogged them to get what he wanted. He issued an executive order to seize control of the steel mills. The steel company sued, and when it ended up at the Supreme Court, the justices, they ruled that Truman's seizure of the steel mills was unlawful and unconstitutional. The decision found that a national emergency does not grant the President of the United States unlimited power, nor the authority to bypass Congress. It would lead to one of the clearest guides to presidential power under the Constitution that we have to this very day. So back to my question. Can Donald Trump legally declare a national emergency to seize the midterms? Experts say, nope, not happening. It is illegal. So sorry. Which brings us to an even more important question. When has that ever stopped President Trump? Some states are not waiting to find out. They're taking matters into their own hands. A flurry of states are passing their own versions of the Voting Rights Act themselves. State lawmakers are introducing legislation to protect polling places. How about Georgia? This week, they launched a bipartisan election integrity task force. The guy behind that, Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. The dude knows a thing or two about federal election interference. You might remember that he refused to help Trump find 11,780 votes in his state in the 2020 presidential election. And here's what Brad Raffensperger said about his bipartisan task force. He said this: they are on both sides of the aisle, but they're also recognized as being fair brokers of the truth. They're not just saying things because they got orders from their party bosses. Raffensperger said the big idea here is to help build and to maintain trust heading into November. In his words, combat those who are casting doubt on it and creating that doubt in people's minds. Combat those who are casting doubt on it and creating that doubt in people's minds. I wonder who he could be talking about. Who knows? As you can see, states are taking action. They're taking measures to fortify their own electoral systems, even as the president gets to his dirty tricks. So we're not totally doomed. There are still safeguards in place, like the courts. And just last week, a federal judge shot down Trump's attempt to curb mail-in voting. The Trump administration, however, is actively pressing the Supreme Court to step in. Joining me now is the person whose hands have been in this introduction the entire time I've been talking, because she's unprofessional. She doesn't know what she's doing here. And it's taken 2 months of shows for her to show up. MS Now's host of The Moment, and my dear friend, Katie.
Your shot is so wide. I was having a hard time moving back enough to get out of the shot. Thank you for having me.
Your arms very long.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
It's really great to see you.
What do you
on
think
a
of my
Sunday
show?
morning.
What do you think of the show?
I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
I like that it's more casual. I came in my more casual Sunday outfit.
I appreciate it. I'm so glad we don't have the green screen up today.
Welcome the tweets about how I need to put on a jacket.
You and I sat on a park bench in Union Square. We actually talked a lot about this the other day.
We did.
Stranger things have happened, Donald Trump says.
Yes.
What does he mean?
Listen, there's twofold here. One, Donald Trump kind of just goes along with whatever is being fed to him or talked at him in the moment. So he's on this show with this friendly guy, and the friendly
Wayne
guy,
Root, super right
Wayne
wing
Root,
MAGA dude.
and he says, "Oh, you should do this and you should do that, and you have all the authority." He has a tendency to just say, "Yeah, of course." So that is part of just the way that he responds in the moment to questions. The other part of it, which is very serious, is that he doesn't like to lose, and he doesn't like to appear weak. Losing makes him appear weak. Mm-hmm. And so what he does, and you can follow his entire presidency this way, in fact, his entire personality, every move he's made for decades now, it is all a projection of strength and importance. And by going out and saying he has all of these authorities, he can declare a national emergency, he can sign these executive orders about mail-in ballots, or trying to get the Postal Service to hold on to them in exchange for voter rolls, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's him saying, I have all the authority in the world.
Whether or not he does.
Because I am the most powerful person in the world, whether or not he does.
Right. I guess the conversation that you and I were having, we were filming it, but it was like a conversation that we would normally have, off the clock, is whether or not you think that he's going to do or follow through with, or our democracy itself can withstand the pressure from him.
So I think it can. I know that I am in the minority among a lot of folks, but I think we will be able to withstand it. I think Donald Trump really tried hard, and obviously we all know this, in 2020 to try to overturn the results of the election. He was not able to do so.
You sat in the anchor chair as you watched on January 6th, people storm the Capitol.
It was horrible. It was awful. And I would not rule out something like that happening again, or an attempt for that to happen again. Obviously, the circumstances have changed abundantly. He's got election deniers in positions of real power, and that is scary.
25 of them right now, and then 100 are running.
Yeah, and not to mention the Attorney General. So if he goes to the Attorney General and tries to demand X, Y, or Z, he's not going to have Bill Barr there any longer. We'll see. And I do think that this time will be different because of not just the number of election deniers that are in positions of power. He's going to try to do things beforehand instead of after the fact. Maybe try to declare a national emergency. Maybe send ICE to polling places.
Well, he's already sent these,
or the National Guard.
He's already sent these monitors from the Justice Department.
Of course.
I was in Michigan. They sent him there. He did it in Minnesota last week. The thing that I want to get to with you is, I used to be the guy who said, and I still believe, I've seen it with ICE, and I saw it in California and in Minnesota and in Charlotte and Chicago. The will of the people has stopped Donald Trump's efforts from encroaching upon the people not only exercising their First Amendment rights, but putting these armed troops on American streets.
Don't disagree.
What I worry about is that he'll do it again. He'll continue to do it until he gets exactly what he wants. And the Supreme Court now look at what they did with gerrymandering. Look at what they've done with voting rights. But look at what they did with birthright citizenship, and look what they did with tariffs. They have not allowed him to go against very rock solid writings within the Constitution, just rock solid constitutional laws that he's tried to break. They have said no to. So I think when it comes to elections, if you're talking about whether this gets to the Supreme Court, it probably will. I think the Supreme Court will side with the states on this. It is clear, abundantly clear in our Constitution that states run elections. The president does not. They're not federally run. But he doesn't even seem to believe in the separation of powers at this point. Okay.
I got another point.
It's my show.
It's the time between Donald Trump declaring a national emergency, or trying to seize voting machines, or trying to meddle with an election, and the Supreme Court getting involved. And that time is the most scary and most dangerous time, because what happens to ballots? Does the continuity get broken?
That's the point.
That's what you should be worried about.
And that is the point, because he doesn't seem to believe in or care about the separation of powers. And he did it in Georgia just recently with going and seizing the 2020 ballots from Fulton County. What if he does it now in the immediate, I think we're saying the same thing, in the immediate aftermath of the election? What if he sends the FBI, or what if he sends Homeland Security investigations?
He will muddy as much up as he possibly can. The reason why I'm not so worried about our long-term future is I think Americans are much wiser today to Donald Trump's actions, his motivations, his hijinks than they have been in the past. And there's a Donald Trump effect that happens with the electorate. A lot of Democrats will experience this, but others as well. People start to get more informed and more engaged about how the system works because he pushes so many boundaries. So he forces engagement and learning about civics in a way that maybe people would feel a little less urgency to do because he is such a unique and boundary-pushing, I'm being nice, boundary-pushing figure in our American politics.
I do believe that's true, and you've heard me say it, they've heard me say it before as well, that the only thing that stopped him from torturing more than 5,500 children, according to the Physicians for Human Rights, using the definition of the United Nations during the family separation policy, was hundreds of thousands of people showing up in the streets, if not millions, around the world.
Absolutely.
The Pope speaking out about it. The only thing that got Greg Bovino in his military costume throwing those things at Americans out of the streets of, like I said, L.A. and Charlotte and Chicago and the hallways of 26 Federal Plaza were people showing up and pushing back. What does that look like when it comes to elections? Just people going out and voting?
I think people going out and voting. I think that Americans will want to exercise their constitutional right to vote, and they will do whatever they need to get in those lines, get there when they need to get there, and cast their ballots. I think if anything is going to save us, it will be not just a wave election, but the sheer number of people who are showing up to participate. You're going to see that across this country. I wonder how much we're going to see it in some of the swing states. In Texas, it's not a swing state, but they want it to be. Democrats want it to be. In Georgia, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, just how many people are going to use their voice to tell the president that this is not his country. This is our country.
They're certainly trying, and Pete Buttigieg was here yesterday. He was in the 2nd congressional district in Nevada, which is the part on the top of the state that's normal. I don't think, whatever the stat was, they haven't voted for a Democrat there maybe ever in Congress, or certainly in the last decades or whatever. And they're trying in these places as well, and they feel like they can get enough people out that they.
I mean, look, they're starting to play in Mississippi, in Idaho. They're finding that if they field a candidate or back off for an independent candidate, they actually have a decent chance of giving the Republicans a run for their money. At the very least, they're forcing Republicans to spend more money in places that they wouldn't want to spend more money, which takes away money from, I don't know, the Texas or the Georgia races.
Because Katy Tur has taken so long to show up on my show.
Stop.
And we've been friends
It's the
forever.
Summer. I was out of town
She's
for a lot of it.
During the commercial break. She's not going anywhere. Neither is her tank top. We'll be right back after a short break.
What are you looking up at in that shot?
We're back with Slimer from Ghostbusters. You're watching Connect on MS Now.
I'm just going to look up.
Do you remember back in 2019 when we had a doc series on this network called American Swamp?
I do. It was so fun.
I had a good time doing that with you.
I love doing that. I was pregnant for most of it. Very uncomfortably pregnant.
Funny you mentioned that because I got a clip. Let's watch that.
Oh, no! Where are you from? Denmark. Oh, please talk to us. You do a great job.
Are you from Sierra Leone? You're 18th place in the world. You know what our turnout is?
No.
122nd place in the world.
If you were to give us advice, what would it be?
Start from the young ones.
No,
So start with this guy?
Start, yes.
Are we a democracy?
I'm not so sure.
Wow.
First of all, my hair looked horrible.
I thought you looked great.
You were very pregnant there. Which child was that?
That was Teddy.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
How's he doing?
He's 7.
That's
He's
crazy.
7 years old. We are old now.
All right, can we talk about the news?
Yeah,
what we were doing there was we were asking diplomats at the United Nations why America's voter turnout was so horrendous.
Dismal.
And they were saying, what did that one woman said? She doesn't even think that we're a democracy. That was during the first Trump term.
Because we have so many people who choose to stay home. And it is, imagine if everybody came out to vote. Imagine if there was compulsory voting. Imagine if we didn't have gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, we put a grid over the United States and just let people vote as they would and had equal representation in Congress.
The reason I wanted to share that clip was not just sartorial, but also because I wanted to make the point that, like, however, that was 2019, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, the democracy has only gotten more effed. Things are only more complicated.
But people
here.
are turning out. I mean, listen, the numbers are not like, the Nordic countries or Australia, but people are turning out more today than they have in the past. Donald Trump motivates people.
Do I believe that? I don't know.
The numbers show it. He motivates people.
You know my hobby horse, which is we should move Election Day from the Tuesday after the first Monday in November to the weekend so that more people can have access or have a national
Or
voting
just
holiday.
have a week of voting.
Yeah, something like that. I saw an Instagram video that you put up about the Oval Office, the Gilded Oval Office, and I really enjoyed it.
Great.
It is crazy. You have been inside the Oval Office, if I'm not mistaken?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I never have. I want to show you a little clip of something. Have you seen this? Let's watch this, guys.
Oh, no.
Nice job on the recreation. Even of the apples, it's fantastic. Although I do want to point out there's no gold sign on the outside that says Oval Office. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
I love Larry, and I love that because the gold sign out of the Oval Office is just the very, very beginning.
Are you and Larry on first name terms?
Pretty close. pretty close.
Yeah, the gold is... What is up with the gold? It's so tacky.
What do you seriously though? When you see everything he's doing, the arch and all these monuments, and what else is he gilding? He's putting all the frames up.
My favorite part was, I know you have Maggie Haberman on, and kudos to you for getting her to come in on a weekend as well.
Excuse me, second time.
It is a testament.
One more time than you've been on the show.
To your popularity and your enthusiasm and your generosity of spirit. Anyway, so my favorite part of her book, and I think I should get a cut of all the times that I've maybe Maggie will. Give
You're
me
talking too
something.
slow. I have something else to show you.
Anyway, so the favorite part I have in the book is Donald Trump on his hands and knees, pasting all of the gilded swirls and bells and whistles to the fireplace.
It is extraordinary to look at it. The last thing I wanted to show you is that I've been working really hard here to become a better host. And the very nice folks at All In with Chris Hayes have allowed me to come. And I subbed a lot this week, and I've been practicing.
Yeah.
I want to show you a little of my practice. I want to see what you think about something I tried to do that you do, which is, well, let's just show people. Hey, everybody. Good evening from New York. I'm Jacob Soboroff in for Chris Hayes. It is a Tuesday in a midterm year, which means it is election night in America once again. And honestly, it feels a little weird to be in the studio as the dude who is normally walking backward down the voting line out there.
Jacob, I love seeing you there, but I wish you were at a polling place. Because look at election days are Jacob Soboroff talking to people waiting in line at polling places, and I'm missing it.
I told Ali Velshi I'm starting to get a rash on my neck from wearing this jacket and tie and suit, and I just want to be in my black tee out there walking backwards down the voting line. Do you see what I did there?
I did. You need a few more songs.
I just have the one. Backwards,
you literally just have one.
I'm new to Fish, and I've been I haven't gone with Katie yet, but I went with my wife a couple times this summer and once in the spring, and I sprinkled a little lyric in there. Was it okay? Did I do it all right?
My friend, you did a great job.
I'm so happy that you came in today, Katie.
I know, because lately I felt a little disconnected, and it's good to connect.
You know what? I made Katie cry the other night when we went out for a drink to the Long Island bar, and I feel sorry about that.
Tears of joy.
I love you in a television way.
Okay, great. All right, good. Leave
Is that
it there.
weird that I said that?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Where's your strawberry?
This is getting weird. Katie Tur, thank you so much for being here. I'm not sure if you're ever going to come back. You can watch Katie Tur on The Moment with Katie Tur weekdays here on MS Now from 2 to 4 Eastern. But you actually have, I'm sorry for everybody, you haven't seen the last of Katie on this broadcast today. She might make an appearance later on.
Oh, God, I'm nervous.
No anchors for Harbin this
I am
week's installment of
nervous.
Prediction Markets. Thank you for being a good
He's
passenger.
going to humiliate me.
And a good friend. You're the best.
You're the best.
Thanks, Katie.